Tonight on Talking Politics, a slew of proposed ballot questions are one big step closer to going in front of voters next fall. So what can we expect to vote on, and what are the most controversial proposals? Plus, the head of Roxbury Community College joins me on the impact of the state's new free tuition program for adults 25 and older. But first, early voting is now underway in the preliminary election for the Boston City Council after a stretch marked by conflict and controversy. 3 members of the council's progressive bloc are fighting to keep their jobs, including Ricardo Arroyo, who's been dogged by controversy since running for Suffolk DA last year, and Kendra Lara, who's facing criminal charges after crashing a car into a Jamaica plane home. All this at a time when the climate on the council has been especially toxic, with City Council President Ed Flynn calling for new anti-bullying rules for the body. So what are the biggest storylines to watch when voters head to the polls next week? I'm joined now by former Bay State Banner senior editor Yawu Miller and by Gin Dumcius, current managing editor for the Dorchester Reporter. Always terrific to see both of you. Thanks for being here. Gin, the 3 incumbents, Ricardo Arroyo, Kendra Lara, and Tania Fernandes Anderson, who represents District 7, how vulnerable do you see them as a group?
Well, I think you've seen some of the endorsements stack up, and some of the supporters have not abandoned them despite all those ethics issues and the car crash. And so I think the expectation is probably for Arroyo to make it through to the final. And the question, I think, on a lot of people's minds is who's going to be the number 2 in this in these races? How many votes do they get? And what happens after that.
So just to be clear, you expect Arroyo to make it through as the top vote getter?
It's possible, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and how about for Lara and Fernandes Anderson? I should mention, by the way, Fernandes Anderson pleaded, I was going to say pleaded guilty, that's the wrong terminology. She admitted or acknowledged an ethics violation earlier this year for hiring her son and sister to work for her in City Hall, which you're not supposed to do. She paid a fine. Ricardo Arroyo had seen allegations of sexual assault dating back to his teen years surface when he ran for Suffolk DA. He was never charged in those cases. And also there were questions raised about his communications with Rachel Rollins, the former U.S. attorney from Massachusetts. He was nudging her as he ran for DA to take action that would benefit his campaign.
Out and out, encouraging.
Okay. What about you? What's your sense of this threesome, how vulnerable they are?
I mean, I think Lara is the one who has the race that people are seeing is closest. That she has two opponents, both of whom are being backed by other city councilors. I think
we should say their names. There's so much info to get in. Enrique Pepin, who is backed by Michelle Wu.
Mayor Michelle Wu, and then you have
Jose Ruiz.
Jose Ruiz, who's, I'm sorry, these are the Arroyo opponents. Yeah, they're backed by, Jose Ruiz is being backed by Martin Walsh.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I think it's kind of unprecedented to see these many endorsements from councilors and mayors in city council races. Not really seen this before, but I think what we're looking at is somewhat of a white backlash against a council that's become majority people of color, majority women, and has leaned way more progressive than it has anywhere in the last 50 years.
Let me ask you about that backlash issue. And since I screwed it up and since I conflated the races, let's talk about the challengers to Lara. You have Ben Weber, who's a white man, seen as a progressive candidate, labor attorney, and then William King, an IT director. He's a person of color who's been backed by some of the white councilors, more conservative councilors. Am I getting that right, getting those details right?
And Gin can suss out, like, there's also PAC money, super PAC money that's coming in, which is also unprecedented for a city council race. And these interventions, again, look very much like, let's take Boston back to where it was before, it was a majority people of color city, before the elected officials represented that.
Talk a bit about the outside money that is floating around out there. Who's looking to influence these races, and how are they doing it?
So there's a couple of super PACs that have formed, and typically in Massachusetts, super PACs are formed by funded by 2 types, and one is wealthy individuals, and the other is unions. And in this case, the most active super PAC is one that's trying to get involved in the District 3 race, District 5, and District 6, which is
funded by Jim Davis, the New Balance chairman.
New Balance chairman. And he also spent over $1 million trying to defeat Mayor Wu and boost Anissa Sabi-George in the 2021 race. And also had George Regan as a PR consultant. So we're going to see how much impact the super PAC is going to have. I would say it's definitely a new development, but it's not unexpected. I mean, super PACs have now been around for over a decade. And I think you're going to see this. If we go to an elected school committee, you're going to see super PACs in school committee races. So it's unprecedented, but not unexpected.
Could you see that super PAC activity creating a backlash? I mean, and I need to be careful here because I've already mixed up the races and potentially confused viewers. I don't want to do it again. In the case of the Kendra Lara race, if I remember correctly, that super PAC has been spending money on advertising and campaign communications for both of her opponents, correct? So I could imagine some voters in that district saying, hey, wait a minute, this just doesn't seem fair. They're out to get her. Could you see that redounding to her benefit?
It's possible. I mean, Ben Weber, I believe, in a statement said it was bonkers that this money was coming towards him and King, and he was very bothered by it. I think we'll see in terms of, if you're talking to the average voter and what a super PAC is, what it means, I think there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of mystique about them. So it's unclear what kind of effect they're going to have.
Yeah, well, I want to ask you a little more about your idea that there's a white backlash brewing here. In some of these races, for example, in the Arroyo race, you've got people of color running against him who are
and with Lara too.
And with Lara, yeah. So I could imagine some people who don't want to see Arroyo or Lara reelected hearing your comments and saying, no, this isn't about racial animus or racial backlash. This is about people who have been publicly accused of doing things that we just don't think councilors should be doing, that are beyond the pale, and we need new voices. What would your response be?
I would say that over the decades, you've seen councilors, violate ethics laws. More recently, we've seen, 4 councilors back a lawsuit against the city. Did they file ethics reports saying that they're basically backing a lawsuit against the redistricting lawsuit, against the council?
White councilors suing.
Yeah. There was it's the same quartet that you see all these 9-4 splits in the votes, and you're seeing councilors Flynn, Murphy,
Flaherty,
Baker, who represent South Boston and the most conservative precincts in Dorchester. And, I think in decades past, you had, a majority conservative white male council, majority Irish American council. And now there's just 4 of them. And so I think Baker and Murphy hosted a fundraiser for William King. He's African American. He leans conservative. He backs the police, whereas Lara and Arroyo have said they want to reduce the police budget, increase funding for crime prevention rather than policing. So, those are the lines that you're seeing the split on. It's more ideological than racial, but race plays a role in it.
Okay. Again, what is Marty Walsh, the former mayor, up to in this contest?
Well, when I spoke to him he endorsed John Fitzgerald in District 3.
This is Frank Baker's district, conservative firebrand on the council who's stepping down.
And a childhood friend of Walsh. Walsh told me that he would be endorsing others down the road, and I think the expectation was that he would be endorsing Jose Ruiz, who the 2 of them are close. I think, as you've seen in a history of Marty Walsh endorsements, a lot of it comes down to it's the personal connection. It's how long they've known each other or the family members.
And Ruiz, who's running against Ricardo Arroyo, he was on the dignitary protection unit for Walsh in City Hall, right? But he's also a more moderate Democrat, right? Akin to Walsh, more of a centrist. 30 years as a Boston police officer, more pro-police certainly than I think people would say Ricardo Arroyo is.
Well, I would say in terms of, this is the within City Hall, it's multi-layered, right? So it's racial, generational, and also in terms of where people fall in their politics. And within the political sphere, you've definitely got the moderate to conservative bloc. You've got the progressive bloc that includes Arroyo, Lara, Fernandes, Anderson, Mejia, and then you've got that another progressive bloc. You know, I don't know if pragmatic is the right term, but you know, it's Bruce Louisiane, it's Brian Worrell, it's Gabriela Coletta.
A little more in line with Mayor Wu, right?
More in line with Mayor Wu, and I think that's, you know, I think some of the councilors in that progressive bloc with Louisiane and others are trying to expand their bloc. So I think that's kind of that dynamic in play here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so complicated and fascinating as you break it down that way. Yawu, in District 5, where former Mayor Marty Walsh has endorsed Jose Ruiz, we've got Mayor Michelle Wu endorsing her former Neighborhood Services head, Enrique Pepin. Does it matter who wins this clash of surrogate candidates? I'm fascinated by the Walsh-Wu dynamic, but I can be a superficial person. Do you think it's significant who prevails there?
I don't know that the voters are really going to, you know, how much does a mayoral endorsement matter in a city council race? I mean, historically, you know, when you've seen Menino or Walsh weigh in, it hasn't necessarily like appeared to move the needle much. Yep. Particularly when it comes to trying to unseat a sitting councilor, you know, when it's happened in the past, it's not been, you know, terribly effective. It remains to be seen. I think everybody's going to be watching that race, sort of wanting to see how that comes out. It's a test of Wu's influence. Like, can she get Pepin into the #2 slot or the #1 slot? Okay.
Any predictions that you want to hazard before we wrap up here?
I'm very bad at predictions, so no.
It's probably smart to one. How about you, Yawu?
I've not put money on any of these candidates, but I think that I think we'll see Arroyo in the preliminary. You know, make it past the preliminary. I think it's safe, and I think that Tania Fernandes Anderson. I mean, she's running against perennial candidates, so she'll do well. Lara's is the one that everybody's watching.
All right, Yawu Miller, Gin Dumcius, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Dozens of proposed ballot questions just got the green light from State Attorney General Andrea Campbell. One of a few big hurdles they have to clear before they can go before Massachusetts voters next year. A huge variety of initiatives made the cut. Many of them are already intensely controversial, but whether you'll have a chance to vote on them hinges on what happens next. GBH News State House reporter Katie Lannan joins me on the big ideas that just moved forward and the complicated process that could bring them to the ballot in 2024. Katie, good to see you, and thanks for being here as always. So, in your write-up for GBH News, you said that the total tally of ballot questions that were approved, 34, I believe,
that's right,
is not quite as impressive as it initially seems. Why is that?
Yeah, so part of the lengthy and complex process of getting on the ballot is that there are usually several court challenges to a lot of these, and they have to go through the AG's office. So lots of times you'll see groups that support one particular policy submit several different versions of a question with wording tweaks, minor differences in hopes of clearing all those hurdles. So there's things like the proponents of a voter ID ballot question submitted 8 versions. The group that wants to define drivers for companies like Uber and Lyft as contractors, not employees, they have, I think, 9 versions. So ultimately, they'll kind of coalesce behind one. You know, you're not going to have 8 voter ID questions on your ballot. Okay,
so they'll go with the one that they deem most legally viable and maybe politically viable as well?
Yeah, there's a lot to consider.
Okay. When you look at the array of questions out there, are there any that you see that would make a big difference in the way a large number of Massachusetts residents live on a daily basis? Because some of them are pretty esoteric, like Diana DeZoglio, the state auditor, looking for explicit authority to be able to audit the legislature. That's sort of an insidery Beacon Hill thing that could benefit citizens. But which ones might make a big difference in ordinary people's lives?
Yeah, I think it really depends on kind of who the person is, as you alluded to there, right? Like if you're someone who has found health benefits from psychedelic substances, a move to decriminalize some of those might make a huge difference for you. If you are a person who works in the service industry, who works a tipped job as a server. There's a proposal to eliminate the tipped minimum wage, gradually bring that up to the same level as the full minimum wage, and that, I think we'll see an argument that that could have broader ramifications for maybe diners in restaurants, restaurant owners as well.
I remember going to a press conference for that last year, I think.
Yeah, there's been some advocacy kind of within the legislature around that, and now we'll see that at the ballot as well. One that has the potential to affect a broad swath of people throughout the state is the proposal backed by the MTA, the Mass Teachers Association, opposed by a number of business groups, that would stop using the MCAS exam as a graduation requirement.
Yeah, that seems like a biggie.
Absolutely. It wouldn't eliminate the test as a whole. It would just decouple it from graduation, and students would be able to prove their competency in other ways.
And we should mention probably State Rep Mike Connolly's push to give cities and towns the authority to implement rent control if they want. One fascinating thing to me there is that people who would like to, some other people who'd like to see rent control become a reality again don't like that he's doing it this way, right? They want to try to go through the legislature rather than the direct democracy route.
Yeah, and it is really interesting to see a legislature pushing kind of an alternative to going through the legislature, right? People take things to the ballot a lot of times when they aren't getting traction in the legislature. And we've certainly seen efforts to lift that statewide ban on rent control, which was put in place at the ballot. That hasn't gotten a lot of traction within the legislature over the last several years.
My recollection, probably in large part from your reporting, is that legislative leaders have not sounded overly enthusiastic about that. So, you know, and I would think that Mike Connolly, my guess would be that Mike Connolly maybe has a sense of where the legislature's headed and what they might or might not do. Any biggies that didn't make the cut that people should know about?
So one of the things that's interesting is the way the AG certifies the questions. She's looking at whether they're constitutionally sound. She's not looking at whether it's good policy, whether she personally likes it. But the Constitution lays out a bunch of rules for what can go on the ballot. And one of the things is that if a similar question has gone before voters in the past 2 elections, nope, not getting through this time. So some of the ones she did not certify, which only a small number out of the 42 filed with her didn't get certified. 3 of those would have imposed voting reforms that include a ranked choice voting system, and that failed at the ballot in, I believe, 2020, so it's still not able to go back before voters.
What happens next for the people who want these things to end up on the ballot next year? Yeah,
it's a long road to the 2024 ballot from here. The next step for campaigns is to gather somewhere around 75,000 registered voter signatures in the next 11 weeks. That's a huge number. It's more than the population of Framingham or Haverhill, and there's a big lift there. And of course, we will also see, as I mentioned, some legal challenges come through. The Supreme Court might, or State Supreme Judicial Court, I should say, might end up weighing in on whether some of these are in fact ballot suitable. For the campaigns that do get the signatures that they need by this fall, winter kind of time period, you'll see the next step there is the legislature decides if they want to pass it right there, if they want to put forward an alternative. We saw that a few years ago with what became known as the Grand Bargain, the package of law, the law that gradually raised the minimum wage while also folding in some more retailer business-friendly language like phasing out time and a half on holidays, so the legislature can put forward a compromise.
And let me ask you about one thing really quickly. There's a proposal to restore voting rights to people who are incarcerated for felony crimes. Different procedure for that one to move forward, right? Because it would be a constitutional amendment?
Yep, even windier, even longer. That'd be for 2026. The legislature has to sign off on it twice in 2 sessions before that could reach the ballot, and they have to go through the signature gathering process as well there.
I hugely appreciate this primer because it is such an insanely complex process. Thank you for the overview. Katie Lannan, good to see you.
Thank you. Sure, we'll talk about it again.
School is back in session and students are back on campus at community colleges across Massachusetts. And under a new state initiative, many of them will be attending free of charge. That is thanks to a new $20 million program, Mass Reconnect, that's set to waive community college tuition for all state residents ages 25 and up who don't already have a degree. The interim president of Roxbury Community College, Jackie Jenkins Scott, joins me now to talk about how that is working so far. Thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
So $20 million has been dispersed to community colleges
Yes.
across the state. How much of that went to
Exciting.
your institution?
So we, because this is a new program and we're all trying to understand the impact, we believe that up to 8,000 students will be able to qualify over the next couple of years. So the Department of Higher Education is really being careful. So we had a few $100,000, which I'm pleased to say we have already gone through our allotment. So we're hoping that more money will be released. This is such an exciting time for community colleges.
I want to highlight the point you just made, that the funding that you got from this $20 million chunk, it's not just for this year, it's for multiple years, right?
No, it's for this year and the spring semester, which starts in January.
Gotcha.
And so we believe that about 6,500 students would be eligible this school year, and over the next couple of years, maybe up to 8,000 or maybe even more.
And that's just at Roxbury Community College?
No, across the Commonwealth.
So for your institution, how many people are currently benefiting or do you expect to benefit?
So we've enrolled nearly 200 with this fall enrollment, and our job is to really get the word out about this great opportunity for students whom, as you mentioned earlier, are 25 and older and have not completed their community college degree or would like to get started. So
how hard has it been to get the word out? Are people aware of this? Because I know it got a lot of attention in the media, but not everyone has time to read
Absolutely.
the papers or watch
Well, it's
news.
a new program, so our job, all of our jobs, is to keep getting the word out and making sure that as many people as possible learn about this program and be able to think about how it might impact them in their lives and their families.
Are there students at Roxbury Community College who are receiving these funds, making their tuition free, who've said to you, I would not be here if it were not for this extra funding?
Absolutely. We've seen our enrollment. Right now we're up about 30% over last year, and it's really exciting. I happen to be talking to one of our professors, Justin Perry, who runs our media arts program, and he told me that he had an increase of about 10 students in his entry-level media arts class yesterday or earlier this week, and all of them said that they came because of this tuition-free opportunity. We're really excited about that.
You, in an interview that you gave to another media outlet, you had spoken with a woman who said that she dropped out of college 40 years ago, and that she planned to come back because of this. Any update on what's going on with her?
I have to find out if she's enrolled. We want to make sure that she's gotten this program available. We've made this program available to her. I'm sure she has.
I think perhaps in that same interview, I saw this funding described as not the entirety of covering, or not covering the entirety of the tuition cost for people who are benefiting, but maybe helping them get to a point where they didn't have to pay anything, as opposed to having to pay $500 or $1,000. Is that, am I right that that's how it's working?
So Mass Reconnect is what we call a last dollar program. So if a student qualifies for some other sources of support, we go through that first, and then their tuition and books are completely covered so that they have no out-of-pocket costs for tuition and books. But many of our students have other needs, as you can imagine: food insecurity, housing, childcare needs, and so on. So our job is to make sure that students, hopefully we can find resources to cover all of their needs or help them to be able to find those resources. But they can be assured that they can go to school tuition free.
I'm glad you mentioned those other needs, because if people aren't familiar with community college populations, broadly speaking, they might not be thinking about those things. And obviously, if you're dealing with food insecurity or don't have money for rent, even a few $100s
makes
for
a
school
big difference.
Could be completely pivotal.
It opens an opportunity. So many of our students work. They work 1, 2, 3 jobs. Some of our students even work 3 jobs.
I honestly cannot even imagine working 2 or 3 jobs and then trying to study
and go to school. It is a challenge, and that just tells you the perseverance and the hope and the courage that these students have. I so admire them, because they have a lot that they're contending with, and to make that commitment to see it through is really quite amazing.
This program is rolling out as student loan payments are
Yes,
poised to restart.
unfortunately.
How big of a hit is it going to be for students at Roxbury Community College when those payments restart?
You know, it's going to be a challenge for students across the board who have had loans and have been able to do some things in the last few years with that discontinuance or the pause in the repayments. Across the board, it's going to hurt. That's why Mass Reconnect is so important right now, because this may, you know, lessen the burden for so many students.
And again, you have
it's really
multiple
pretty
burdens.
multiple burdens that you're contending with, and if we can take some things off the plate, free tuition is really an opportunity. It's an opening for students to realize their dreams and continue on their educational journey, because we know the results of what education means in terms of long-term health and economic viability. So it's a great opportunity. We're very, very grateful that in this state, in Massachusetts, we have consensus. We have a governor and a lieutenant governor who believes highly in educational opportunity, and a state legislature who supported this.
You might have anticipated the last question I wanted to ask. I was going to ask if you expect that this funding will continue to be made available in the years to come. It sounds like the answer is probably yes.
Well, I think one of the things is our Senate president is really looking at how we make community college free for all students. So that's exciting. My hope and our hope, I know that my colleagues across the state, we are very optimistic that this funding will continue, and that we'll be looking for other ways to support students throughout their educational journey.
If that happens, please come back
I'd
and
love
talk
to come
about the
back.
implications
Thank
of
you
it.
so
All right,
much
Jackie
for
Jenkins
having
Scott,
me.
Thank you for being here. That is it for tonight, but do come back next week. And please tell us what you think. The email is talkingpolitics@wgbh.org. The website's gbhnews.org/talkingpolitics. Or you can find me on X. I'm at Reilly Adam. For now, thank you for watching, and good night.
Masterpiece